Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. I'm Dan Scogan, Director of Government and Industry Relations for AURI. Now, guests on the Ag Innovation News Podcast will shed light on innovations in value-added ag, highlight important voices and work that's being done throughout the Minnesota ag sector, and educate the public about resources and organizations that support Minnesota agriculture. Today, we get a chance to visit with Jen Wagner-Lahr, the Senior Director of Business Development and Commercialization at AURI. Jen, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Dan.
Let's start with you doing a brief bio on yourself rather than me doing it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to AURI.
Sure. I grew up on a dairy farm in central Minnesota and was very active in agriculture throughout my childhood and teenage years through 4-H and FFA. And ultimately, found my way to the University of Minnesota to study agriculture. And so I got my degree in agricultural economics. I went to grad school over in Berlin, Germany, and Wageningen, Netherlands, and got my master's degree. The focus of my master's degree was on international agricultural sciences, but also rural economic development. When I came home, I worked for an agricultural exchange program for many years, providing training opportunities for students coming from all over the world that wanted to learn about American agriculture, and also providing opportunities for American kids to go overseas and learn about agriculture in other countries. But ultimately, what I was looking for was a career in economic development. And one day I was at a Starbucks, and I just happened to open up the newspaper, and there was a job opportunity with AURI, and I decided to apply, and I got the job. I started my career at AURI as project development director, and I focused quite a bit on the livestock sector, especially the dairy industry.
That's an interesting story, Jen, and you just kind of found your niche there. I know you've moved around within the organization a little bit, but you are feeling fulfilled from your work as a director of business development and commercialization?
Indeed, I am. I found early on with AURI that there's a lot of things that are happening across the state and the region, and even nationally, in value-added agriculture that really provide opportunities not only for value-added agriculture and providing demand for the crops and products coming off of our farms, but also creating jobs in rural areas, which, based on my degree, jobs, investment, capital investment, new sales, that's all a part of economic development. And I found that AURI was actually a pretty good avenue for generating that type of impact. And I felt like on an everyday basis, myself as well as my team at AURI is having that type of impact, that it's providing new opportunities for people across the state and region, finding jobs, finding new value and wealth through innovation in agriculture.
I have a lot of things I want to talk to you about today, Jen, especially about value-added innovation and what we're seeing in value add. But I wanted you to start with your family farm a little bit too, because you're one of the AURI employees or team members that actually is an active farmer. So tell me a little bit about your farm operation and your family.
Sure. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm glad you brought it up. Growing up on a farm was not where my agricultural pursuits on the farm ended. I actually was lucky enough to marry a Stearns County farmer, and he and I have been able to expand our operation. We have 3 children that we're hoping someday will be a part of our farm. But what we do on our farm, there's a couple different things. We have a row crop operation that we manage as part of a partnership with my husband's brother and his wife. And then Larry and I have a dairy heifer raising operation, as well as some cropping on our own. But some of the interesting things that we've been able to do as part of our farming operation has been a lease that we have with a solar developer who basically manages about 40 acres of our land, which is all under solar photovoltaic farms. It's called agrivoltaics, which is interesting because it's utilizing the land in a different way. So you're harvesting the sun not to produce crops, but to produce energy. And one of the interesting things we've been able to incorporate into that solar site is a pollinator-friendly mix. And we have a partnership with local honey producers that put their hives right outside the perimeter fence of our solar farm, and they're able to market their honey as solar grown. We also have just begun exploring in new agricultural practices and signed up as part of a pilot here in central Minnesota through the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium. So we have adopted on a portion of our land no-till cropping practices as well as cover crops. And so we've been experimenting with that and learning a lot along the way.
I think we could do a whole program on that, Jen, but it's got to fall kind of into the sweet spot of what you enjoy seeing in agriculture, and that is innovation, diversification, value add. It all kind of comes together for you on your farm.
Yes, it does. And I oftentimes will come home from meetings full of energy and ideas, and I usually have to get tempered from Larry in terms of what's realistic and how much we could bite off at one time.
Okay, you're the business development and commercialization senior director. Tell me what those duties are.
So I have the opportunity to work with an amazing team of business development directors and all of our events staff as well. So our business development team, they're the ones that are out there pounding the pavement, meeting with clients, sleuthing to find new opportunities, and really bringing their experience in the field to generate new ideas for the agricultural industry that really drives the programming that we do here with AURI, including the types of events that we put on through the AURI Connects program. So I do a lot with programming, staffing, overseeing funding and budgets for that area, but really I see my role as powering my team.
And of course, one of the important pieces that AURI works on is that commercialization. We see the opportunity to value add, but we're interested in seeing it come to the marketplace. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. And I think that's, the reason why a lot of our programs have been generated in the first place is to really be that support mechanism for the agricultural community in commercializing new ideas, whether it's new products or technologies. We provide ways for them to learn new information, which is a lot about what our AUR Connects program does. But we also find ways to create and expand people's networks so they can make those collisions with other entrepreneurs and interested parties. Sometimes it's enablers like the investment community. But our whole suite of services since the very beginning has been around providing that more or less research and development laboratory for our region's entrepreneurs and private businesses that are implementing new innovations. So, scientific staff, business development staff, laboratories, a lot of know how in how you get products to the market.
I think we could get a lot of different definitions of value add. So, Jen, from your perspective and the work that you do at AURI, how do you view value added agriculture?
Well, I don't know if you're going to like this answer, but I really, really love the way that the USDA has defined value added agriculture. And it doesn't just stop with taking a product that comes off the farm and changing it into something with higher value. It actually includes things like how you market your product. Are you doing something different on the farm, even that would potentially generate higher value for an otherwise conventional agricultural or commodity priced product? But it also can include things like identity preservation. A lot of the work that we do at AURI has to do with changing the product itself into a higher value, such as milling wheat into flour for breads and things like that. But I think a lot of the work that our business development team does is looking at the value proposition of different products, and not only just how you change that into a higher value product, but what are the different things that you can bring to the table with how you process your product.
Do you put your team together with a client or do you get some hands on with the client? What's your position and your relationship to the value added client?
I don't think I would do very well at AURI if I didn't have a chance to be more involved with the clients. And that's one of the things that I've loved since the very beginning. That's where I think a lot of inspiration and excitement really comes from is seeing what people are doing with various ideas, whether they're ideas that are coming from AURI or other partners or been the brainchild of a particular client since they were a kid. I really like to have that one-on-one involvement. And that's one of the nice things about this organization. You're not assigned one person, that one person is your only point of contact. We bring a team of professionals with a lot of different backgrounds and perspectives and expertise to really help a client move that idea to reality.
And you have some relationships with some very important partners.
Yeah, so a lot of those started before I was at AURI and growing up as a dairy kid in central Minnesota. But I also made a lot of connections throughout the years, not only through FFA and 4 H, but at my time at the University of Minnesota. And so it's such a nice thing to run into people that you've known for decades at different events. It's really a small world when you come to think about it. When you think about the agricultural industry and who is working hard to make a difference for producers on the farm and for people in the industry. Yes, I have a lot of folks that I've known for many years, and have a passion for agriculture and in many cases for rural communities like myself.
Jen, I want to have you look in the crystal ball here just for a little bit. And before we look too far out into the future, talk about a few of the emerging topics or areas that are starting to show themselves that consumers or client maybe should be aware of.
Yeah, so I think there are a few things that are really driving innovation in this space and really, I would say are responsible for the emerging innovations and concepts that we're seeing come before us, and actually things that we're even moving forward internally. Things that are driven, I would say, by climate concerns, climate change, really a drive towards sustainability and lower carbon intensity products. Massive area of innovation that really spans, our focus areas of food as well as bioindustrial products. When looking at food, there are a couple interesting areas. I mean, it's always been, snacks and convenience, related foods, but health and wellness has been huge for, many years. But really, I think there's a spotlight shown on, food and its impact on health and wellness as part of the pandemic. And so there's a lot of innovation in that space as well. I can go on in terms of some of the things that we're seeing related to climate and sustainability and lower carbon. Things like different renewable energy opportunities, as well as even things like fertilizer that we've, for many decades, relied upon sources far away for our fertilizer needs. For those operations that didn't have livestock that could, reincorporate nutrients from livestock into the fields. I mean, we've often relied upon fertilizer coming from very far away, and we're now looking at, what can we do locally to fertilize our opportunities. And to me, those emerging areas are extremely exciting.
So, strategically, do you see AURI as being a partner with somebody on climate change, on sustainability, on carbon capture, or does AURI have its own kind of road to go down?
So all of the things I mentioned are impacting different innovations that AURI can support. Oftentimes, that's going to be through client driven innovation or partner driven innovation, where we can basically bring our suite of services through our commercialization program to bear on those ideas. But I think we are also seeing areas where we can be innovative as an organization and potentially generate value that we can turn back into investment into the organization to drive future innovations for the industry.
I'm going to have you look out a little further then. We open the paper now and we see climate change and sustainability and carbon capture. If we look 2 to 5 years down the road, are there things that are starting to emerge now that AURI has their eye on?
Yes, we recently had our Minnesota Renewable Energy Roundtable focused on one of those opportunities, and that goes back to, climate and sustainability and lower carbon intense products. But that is the opportunity for anaerobic digestion. And we are seeing a lot of interest in working with our dairy farmers and processing facilities across the state for food waste and processing waste. Again, just finding ways to add value to, not only agricultural products, but also byproducts and co-products coming out of the processing facilities. So there's interest in taking that waste and converting it into renewable natural gas. And there's a number of drivers of why that is happening. But for dairy farmers, particularly interesting because the industry has, stated very publicly that by 2050 they want to be net zero. And this will be one of the ways that they achieve that. So we're starting to invest ourselves in staff that can really be a service provider to farmers and to local governments as they're evaluating these different opportunities coming before them. But that's just one area. I think we're also seeing a lot of opportunity in renewable energy more generally. With the electrification of the grid, lower carbon fuels, both liquid and gas, I think there's lots of opportunity for agriculture to play a role in those different innovative areas. And then again, there's the fertilizer that I mentioned. And then in foods, the health and wellness I mentioned already, but there's a lot happening in sustainable proteins. You hear that first and you think, oh, all proteins, novel proteins, or even just plant proteins. But when I'm saying sustainable proteins, I mean all proteins, so animal proteins as well. There's a lot of interest in innovation in our protein sector, and that has actually been a very big focus for our organization, with a number of opportunities that have been presented to us through the USDA partnerships that we've had with the Ag Marketing Service.
And I want to turn to that here next, that and your AURI Connects program. But just to hear you summarize what the next 5 years is going to look like, Jen, it has to be an exciting time not only for AURI, but for agriculture in general. Agriculture is going to be a part of the next big thing.
Yes, it is. And I think that's something that we've always known. For those of us that have been in the industry for quite some time, have that passion for agriculture, but we also see the opportunity that our industry can have, and so solving some of the global challenges that exist on our planet. I think that is the whole reason why the EMBL Coalition came into being. It was really to create a collaborative space for Minnesota's biggest agricultural and food companies to come together to really, put some muscle into solving some of the grand challenges. And so there is an enormous opportunity for me as a farmer, as well as an AURI staff member. It's just so exciting to be a part of this industry in a time like we are seeing today. New and emerging crops and new and emerging markets that I think has just really accelerated in the last several years.
I just want to remind everyone that you're listening to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. And we're visiting today with Jen Wagner-Lahr. Jen is the Senior Director of Business Development and Commercialization at AURI. And Jen, I want to turn now to some programs that you're involved with, and you've touched on both of them, I think, in the first part of our program, but AURI Connects and the Ag Marketing Service cooperative agreement that AURI has. And let's start with AURI Connects. That is a relatively new piece of the puzzle at AURI. What's that all about?
So AURI Connects was, I would say, our answer to, how do we be a megaphone for the work that's happening at AURI? AURI has invested a lot of time and staff and resources into commercialization services, so one-on-one client work, but we also have a very large body of work that is in the public domain. And so our initiatives in that space are really intended for industry more broadly to provide information, to provide tools and guides, and really shine a light on barriers or opportunities. And we needed a way to keep that from being so passive, where all of a sudden you produce a study, and what do you do with it? You put it on your website, you maybe call it out in a press release or a news article, but we didn't want to stop with that. Those are all great ways of communicating, but we really wanted to provide a place where industry could not only learn about a new opportunity, but maybe even have conversations and some collisions around those opportunities to actually bring those opportunities into more of an active space. And so we wanted to basically create a conversation around various opportunities and provide that place where people could come together and talk it over, and potentially even put it into action, where then our programs and services that have been around for 30 plus years could go to work, and we could help those individuals actually put that information into new products, new businesses, new technologies. So it was intended to be very much of extending our programs and services in a way that would continue to drive innovation both internally and externally. So we have a number of events that we offer as part of our AURI Connects program. Some of these events happen only one time a year, like our New Uses Forum and our Minnesota Renewable Energy Roundtable. But then we have other programs that we offer much more frequently. We have our Webinar Wednesday program that happens once a month to talk through new opportunities and new work that we're putting out into the ag sphere. And then we also have our Fields of Innovation platform, which is very much like our other events in terms of either in-person or webinar format. But we also do a number of things to highlight innovation that's happening through various people and clients that we've worked with. So we have our innovator spotlights. But the Fields of Innovation is all about, what is actually emerging that more people need to know about, that may just by their very nature be very new and only really involve a handful of people, but the opportunity is much, much bigger than that. And we just need to expand the audience and be much more inclusive in terms of who's a part of that opportunity versus exclusive.
I like how you call it a megaphone. You're trying to turn people's heads by sharing information.
Exactly. And get those wheels turning and thinking about, what that information could mean for their businesses, or even, maybe their dream of having a business of their own one day.
Put a little more meat on the bone for me, though, on how it would benefit Minnesota's food and ag ecosystem, or how you see it benefiting that ecosystem.
Right. So as I mentioned, we really want to have that conversation and really inspire action. That we're not just a platform to share information. We really want to spur action, and so we do that through inspiring, through providing new knowledge, new tools, celebrating innovation, which again I think can inspire people when they see people that maybe they know that have actually gone out on a limb and have invested, a lot of sweat equity into an idea and they see them succeed. I mean, we really want to celebrate those innovators and risk takers. So it's intended to kind of be that conversation starter, but also kind of get people dreaming, and then know that as they're dreaming and thinking through the opportunities, our staff stand ready to help them mobilize their ideas and get them on a shelf.
Earlier in our conversation, you talked about the egg marketing service through USDA. So let's turn our attention to that. Tell us a little bit about that development at AURI.
Sure. So in the last couple years, AURI has been able to support the USDA Ag Marketing Service through their efforts to really bring more programming and opportunity to the meat and poultry processing sector. So for years, there has been conversation about how do we support our meat processors. Many of them are very small meat processors, so only just a handful of employees. And in the state of Minnesota, there are a lot of meat processors in the state, maybe even more so in this state than other states. So we really wanted to think about what we could do to support our meat industry. And the federal government was thinking the same way, especially coming out of the pandemic and seeing the challenges that the meat industry faced during the early days of COVID, and trying to rebound from that. And so there were a lot of federal dollars put into USDA programming with a focus on meat and poultry processing. And so we had basically agreed to do a pilot in the 5-state region, all focused on resiliency of our small and local regional meat processors. And so with that work, we've been able to really focus on a few areas of work: financing, and how do you basically, from start up to expansion to even succession, how do you operate a meat processing business through that timeline, and exploring things like benchmarking, understanding that even though there are a lot of meat processors out there, they don't necessarily have a good understanding of how they're performing compared to their peers. So trying to shine a light on, what is the typical financing, the typical profit and loss of a meat processor in this region. We've also been able to look at, what needs they have going forward. How can we support them in, the effort to increase the resiliency of these operations? And through the needs assessment, we were able to identify, a few key areas where we could be helpful to the meat industry through a number of short courses. But there are certainly some things that we learned that are not necessarily a mission fit for organization, where we can really work with our partners. And we've even seen quite a bit of movement in areas such as workforce, and starting to see new college courses come online, which has been really exciting to see that within the ecosystem. And so we continue to work on that cooperative agreement that we have with the AMS in the region and providing technical assistance to the region's meat processors. We more recently signed an agreement with the USDA AMS to provide technical assistance to, again, the same region's meat processors, but this time with a focus on helping them secure additional federal funding for expansions or changing over to different inspection status. The federal government, with this focus on providing more funding to the meat processing sector, really wanted to make sure that the funding was going to local meat processors, small, very small meat processors, medium-sized meat processors, not the big bigs, but also understanding that more than likely those individuals in that target audience probably have never successfully received a grant from the federal government before. So they wanted to mobilize a network of technical assistance providers across the country that could really serve as coaches to help them through the application process, but then not stop there. Once they were successfully awarded a grant through the federal government, or even loans in this case, that they would have a support network to really help them implement that funding successfully. And so AURI signed on for a 2-year agreement as a technical assistance provider that may be extended for additional years after the first 2 years here.
And the whole ag marketing service, because I have the advantage of looking behind the curtain a little bit at AURI, this is a whole new adventure for USDA and for AURI. And even though we're early on in it, are we seeing potential impacts yet?
I thought it was incredibly insightful of the federal government and the agency to, really recognize that there were going to be challenges of actually getting the dollars out in a way that would be successful. I mean, you could certainly award the money, but then there's a concern of whether or not it has the impact that you want it to have. And so I thought it was incredibly insightful to put a program like that together and then to do outreach to organizations that are already plugged in to the industry and have the networks to really, hit the ground running when it comes to getting these processors the support that they need. So I think that there had been some potential experimentation with a technical assistance provider network in another agency. And I believe that there are conversations about maybe extending this beyond meat and poultry processing. But again, I think it's experiment, and they're very keen to see, if it's going to work out.
And your perspective, is it working?
I think so. Just in my early conversations with a number of the meat processors around the region, there's a lot of questions. I mean, we struggle sometimes with completing federal grant applications. They're challenging, and have a lot of requirements, not only in terms of the questions that they're asking you, but the forms that you need to submit, and then the implementation is a whole nother consideration. And so very early on in those conversations, you could tell that processors really needed somebody who could just walk them through what a question was asking them and what types of information they needed to go out and find, because we're not doing their applications for them, we're coaching and really helping them be the one who's going and doing the research and putting that information into their application.
And I understand that the AURI is currently working on a couple of requests for proposals or RFPs. Are you able to talk about those yet?
Yes, so we, through the needs assessment and now the work that we're doing on the technical assistance piece of our first cooperative agreement, have determined there are some areas where we need to do some further research. And one of those areas is all around cold storage. So we have heard for quite some time that there are shortages as it relates to cold storage. And this has not affected the meat and poultry processing sector. They have equally been impacted and potentially even more. So, and we really want to understand what that looks like. So we are doing a couple different requests for proposals around this idea of cold storage. One is a deep dive into a local Minnesota region that has expressed a great deal of interest in really trying to understand what the bottleneck looks like, what the demand looks like, and what it would really take to solve the problem and, create some interest and investment in the cold storage space. But we're also expanding that much more regionally to our 5-state region to understand what the opportunity looks like from a 5-state region, because some of that investment can, if it happens in one state, it can certainly have impacts in another in a good way. And so we want to understand what that looks like. So those requests for proposals are just about ready to be released and will be on our website for folks to take a look at.
Excellent. And that website is auri.org. Jen, you're the Senior Director of Business Development and Commercialization at AURI. Is there anything else as we come up to the end of our program today that you want our listeners to know about AURI or value-added agriculture, or what do you want to give them for the last word?
Sure. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today and share my perspective, not only as an AURI staff member, but also as a farmer. And on that note, I've mentioned several times how exciting it is to really see the innovation that comes to us every day, from the clients that we're working with and the partners that we're supporting. And that is not lost on me as a farmer. And I realize, this takes an enormous amount of risk to bring, a new business online, or even to sometimes bring a new product line to the market. And so farmers know what it's like to be in a risky business. And we certainly see what our entrepreneurs and innovators are doing out there and have a great amount of respect and appreciation for the work that they're doing. And I want them to know that, AURI has people ready to help. So, I'm assuming there's people out there that are listening to this that may have that idea kind of, tickling and nudging at them every once in a while. And we'd love to have a conversation, on my business development team with you about your idea.
It's been a pleasure today, Jen. Thanks for your time.
You bet. Thank you.
We've been visiting with Jen Wagner-Lahr, AURI's Senior Director of Business Development and Commercialization. Thanks for joining us today. And thank you for listening to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. Thanks to our podcast crew, Eric Evans, AURI Director of Communications, and Lisa Martinez, AURI Communications Coordinator and Editor of this production. To learn more about AURI, visit auri.org. And as we come up to the holiday season, we want to wish you and yours the happiest of holidays and a very prosperous new year.